What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. All right, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about the wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix. Technically, it's Cyclops and Jean Grey because around this time in Marvel Comics, the Phoenix was Rachel Summers. But either way, when it comes to this moment, it was a huge moment in Marvel Comics, talking about the idea of one of the most power couples in Marvel Comics finally coming together. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to take a few storylines that led into the wedding and put all those stories into one big video. And so I do hope you enjoy today's full story video with the wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix, technically Jean Grey. Okay, so we have now reached a point where we are officially done with Fatal Attractions, but now we're going to work our way up to the next crossover when it comes to the X-Men, and that'll be the Phalanx Covenant. Now, for that story arc, we do have a lot of different stories that do take place that lead into that next crossover for the X-Men. But first, we had to sit down and cover X-Men Annual Issue number 2. And the reason why, because we're still continuing the whole idea of the legacy virus being out there in the world of Marvel Comics at this time. Now remember, the legacy virus is this virus where basically it was made by Strife to kill off the mutant race. And we're seeing more and more mutants getting hit by the virus left and right. Mutants are dying across the board. But the storyline is kind of like, what would happen if one of the own X-Men gets the virus as well? And so getting into today's video, we do pick up with two characters. Now would be Avalanche and Crimson Commando. Really, by this point in the 1990s, he was no longer calling himself Crimson Commando. He was now just being called Commando, and that was it. Now, these are two characters we have not seen in a good while when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. So here's a quick refresher. You see, these two characters were part of a team called Freedom Force. Now, real quickly, you see, in Marvel Comics, you had different versions of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The first version was created by Magneto. The second version was being led by Mystique. In the 90s, the third version was, well, being led by Toad. Now, when it came to Mystique's team, after a while, you had the entire team go work for the government. But over time, you had different members of the team just leave for different reasons. By this point right now, it's just two characters, Commando and Avalanche, and that's really it. But getting back into the story, we see right now the two characters arriving to Big Pine Keys. Now, Big Pine Keys are small islands off the coast of Florida, but we see our two characters arriving at a fortress that belongs to a character called Jonathan Chambers. Now, he'll become very important for the later parts of this video, but once you have the two characters being able to get inside his home, well, they are confronted by the newest version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, being led by Toad. Now, most of the members of this team, they have bad blood against Commando and also Avalanche, because the last mission they were on together as Freedom Force did not go as well as they had planned it. And so right now, you have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants wanting to fight against Avalanche and also Commando, but they are then stopped by Jonathan Chambers, who says, listen, if they're your friends, sooner or later, they'll be my friends as well. They came here for a good reason, and honestly, I want to hear them out, but show them what we are trying to achieve here. But now we can jump back over to the school of Charles Xavier. Now, like I said at the very beginning of this video, you have our heroes right now trying to figure out how to stop the legacy virus from spreading and killing off more mutants, but also trying their best to find a cure for the legacy virus. Now, for Charles Xavier, Beast, and Morbid Tagger, they had created a device that kind of tells them when somebody had died from the legacy virus. Now, something else we have to remember is that in the earlier parts of our coverage over the X-Men, after the Executioner song, when it came to Charles Xavier and also Morbid Tagger, they were not telling anybody about the legacy virus or the fact that they were trying to find a way to cure the virus. But then sooner or later, the rest of the X-Men found out because Illyana, the younger sister of Colossus, had died by the legacy virus. When it came to Beast, he was very upset about the fact that Charles Xavier did not even ask him to help out because Beast is a scientist, and most likely if he had worked alongside with Morbid Tagger and Charles Xavier, they could have possibly found a cure for the virus a long time ago. But either way, you didn't have Charles' device say another mutant has died by the hands of the legacy virus. Now, you also have the book reminding us of the lovely stuff that was going on in the 1990s when it came to the character known as Psylocke. Let me explain. You see, in the 1980s, you had Marvel give us a new character in X-Men comics, and that was Betsy Braddock. Now, she had appeared long before in X-Men comics, but around that time, in the 80s, she was new to the book. Now, when it came to Betsy Braddock, she had joined the X-Men shortly after the Mutant Massacre. But here's the catch. She was a British woman. Now, when it came to acts of vengeance, you had our heroes use the Siege Perilous as a way to escape from the Reavers who were chasing down the X-Men. And she had disappeared, but when she had reappeared, she came back as a Japanese woman. Now, we had learned that technically it was the Hand who had a hand in the reason why Betsy Braddock was now in the body of a Japanese woman. But then over the next few years in Marvel Comics, it was kind of like, okay, no matter what, she's now in the body of a Japanese woman. But then out of nowhere, you had Marvel bring back the original version of Betsy Braddock, the British version. And this is where things got a tad bit complicated. You see, you had Marvel tell us that there were two ladies, Kawanin and Betsy Braddock. And what happened was, thanks to the Hand and other people, you had both the minds of both of the ladies go into both of the bodies of Betsy Braddock, the British woman and the Japanese woman. And so in each body, you have half the mind of each of the ladies. And so technically, you have both Betsy Braddock and Kawanin in the body of the Japanese woman, and the same thing for the British woman. And so it's so weird, but at the same time, you have both ladies trying to figure out who is Betsy and who is Kawanin. Now, I want to jump back over to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And the reason why, because we do see Pyro and Avalanche having that conversation with one another, a heart-to-heart. Now, we're getting reminded that these two characters were actually close when they were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but also Freedom Force as well. But we kind of learned the idea that there's something going on with Pyro. And the reason why I'm saying that because as we go back inside the fortress that belongs to Jonathan Chambers, we do learn from Toad that Pyro needs some kind of help. Not physically, but emotionally. Now, with that being said, we also see the different members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants get upset with Commando. Now, this leads into us learning about the powers of Jonathan Chambers. You see, for Jonathan Chambers, he has the ability to absorb other people's emotions and take that energy and being able to shoot it as a blast of energy towards his targets. Now, for Jonathan, he's telling us that he wants to make his home a haven for all mutants across the world who are being attacked by the legacy virus. Now, on the outside home of Jonathan Chambers, we do pick up with Peter Gyrich. Now, we have talked about Gyrich before. You see, he works for the government, but he's also part of Project Wide Awake. Now, when it comes to Project Wide Awake, it's the government trying to get ready just in case anything happens towards the mutant race. With this project, they're able to keep tabs on everything going on with the mutant race, but at the same time, they're also able to build different kinds of weapons they could use against the mutant race just in case of war coming down the road against the mutant race. Now, for Peter Gyrich, we do learn that for Crimson Commando and also Avalanche, the reason why they came here is because they're still working for the government. And so it's right now Peter trying to use those two characters as a way for those two to meet up with their old friends, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but to also gather intel on what's happening with the Brotherhood, but also with Jonathan Chambers. Because we do learn that Jonathan had kidnapped two doctors who had worked for the government. Two doctors who are well known for working on different kinds of diseases across the entire world. And so now we have to jump back over to the X-Men. Now, when we do, we see the X-Men heading over to the home of Jonathan Chambers. And the reason why, because, well, Charles Xavier had been keeping tabs on Chambers. And the reason why, because Chambers is also kind of like Charles, wanting to bridge that gap between the mutant race and the human race. But here's the catch, though. You see, for Chambers, he does talk shows or use books as a way to explain why mutants and humans should get along with one another. Now, for Charles, he also got word that there are two scientists right now at the home of Jonathan Chambers, the same two scientists that Henry Gyrich wants back. But one of those scientists has been working with Charles Xavier behind the scenes. And that one scientist had called Charles to say, hey, listen, for Chambers, he has some new company over. And that new company is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, for the X-Men, they're going to be in two different teams. The first team is going to be Cyclops, Rogue, and Beast. And they were actually welcomed inside the home of Jonathan Chambers. But you have Gambit, Kawana, and Psylocke going to sneak around the actual base of Jonathan Chambers to hopefully find a scientist, but to also collect more intel on him. But now we jump over to Peter Gyrich for a brief moment. And the reason why, because you have Peter very upset about the fact that the X-Men were able to sneak their way onto the island of Jonathan Chambers. Now, one of his agents tells them, like, why he's so upset for, because there is a possibility that the X-Men and the Brotherhood could fight against one another and possibly take each other out. And if that happens, that'll be great for our whole entire organization. Now, we do see that Gambit, Kawanan, and Rogue were able to sneak their way into the home of Jonathan Chambers. Now, real quick, I want to say that for Kawanan and Psylocke, they find Gambit very annoying, especially for Kawanan, because she's only been around for a short period of time. And so for her, she's kind of like, is Gambit always like this, always talking, always flirting? And the answer is yes, he's always like that. But either way, you do have the team sneak their way into the home of Jonathan Chambers. Now, for the X-Men, they want answers. They want to know if Jonathan Chambers is holding on to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants down in the basement of his home. And really, for Jonathan Chambers, he's kind of like, dude, I have nothing to hide. If that is your question, then here's your answer. Yes, I do have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants right now in the basement of my home. But right after you have Jonathan tell the first team of the X-Men that yes, the Brotherhood is there, you then have the other X-Men team, Gambit, Kawana, and Psylocke, begin a fight against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, you do have the other X-Men team arrive to help out the other team to fight against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But while you have both sides going against one another, you didn't have Beast tell the Brotherhood, like, listen, Avalanche and also Commando are not here to fix their friendship with you guys. They still work for the government. They're part of Project Wide Awake. Now, for Pyro, he cannot believe that his old best friend Avalanche did not come here to fix their friendship, that technically he's still working for the government. Shortly after that, you then have Chambers use his powers as a way to calm everybody down by basically saying, listen, let me explain what is exactly going on here in my home. And so we do learn very quickly here that the reason why Pyro and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are there at the home of Chambers is because Pyro has the legacy virus. As we all know, as soon as you get the legacy virus, you are going to die sooner or later. Now, let's not forget, for Chambers, he has the ability to absorb other people's negative emotions. And so, what he's doing for Pyro is giving Pyro the ability to not feel the pain of the virus slowly killing him off. But also, you have Chambers using Pyro and other people who are affected by the legacy virus as guinea pigs to hopefully find a cure for the actual legacy virus. Now, for Cyclops and the X-Men, most of the X-Men, they kind of believe in the fact that what Chambers is doing is wrong. Like, yes, you are able to ease the pain for other people, but at the same time, you're using them as guinea pigs. Now, for Pyro, he's kind of like, yes, he may be using me, but I'm also using him as a way to stop feeling what I'm feeling right now inside of me. Now, as soon as you have Pyro say those words over to Cyclops, we kind of find out another big time character also has the legacy virus, and that would be Kawanin. Now, it kind of seems like this was Marvel trying to begin the process of possibly removing Kawanin out of X-Men comics and shifting their focus back onto good old Betsy Braddock once again, who's in the body of a Japanese woman. But when it comes to Kawanin, she tells Cyclops, like, listen, we don't have the right to tell people how they want to die. If Pyro here wants to die the way he wants to die, then we should go ahead and accept his wishes. Even though it could be wrong in our eyes, we still don't have the right to tell him how he should die. And so it's really more Kawanin saying, let's go ahead and leave because everyone here right now who's basically being guinea pigs for Chambers, they chose this. And we don't have the right to force them to change their minds. It is completely wrong. Now, the book kind of ends on that note. Now, you do have Peter Gyrich kind of make his presence known to Chambers, but for Chambers, kind of like, listen, you can arrest me and you cannot stop me because what I'm doing here is to help out the mutant race. And every single mutant that comes here, they come here of their own free will. They're trying to find a way to survive, or they want a few moments of not feeling the pain of the virus killing them. And so for Cyclops and the X-Men, they kind of realize that, yeah, what he's doing here is not illegal. And so they also leave as well. But before they do leave, you do have Chambers ask Kawanin to stay here. And she says no. And then you have the X-Men leave. And that ends today's What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the X-Men, but now we're going to dive into some more X-Men 1991 series, and we do pick up at issue number 27. Now, this is a one-shot story where you do have some members of the X-Men confronting Mr. Sinister and his new goal in life. Really not a new goal because he told us earlier that he was trying to help out the mutant race, but we are getting our first look at a new character at this point in time in Marvel Comics. And that would be the character known as Trinity. Now, when it comes to Trinity, this is her first full appearance in Marvel Comics. Now, the reason why I say her first full appearance is because she first appeared in a book called The Strike Files. Now, that book came out in like 1992 or 93. Now, that book did contain different information about different characters in X-Men comics, but there was a catch to it. You see, in that book alone, it also contained information about characters who had not appeared yet in Marvel Comics. So if you got that book, you got your first look at future characters to come down the road later on in X-Men Comics. And she was one of those characters. Now, when it comes to Trinity, she is a mutant, yes, but when it comes to her mutant ability, it's truly messed up, and let me explain. So when it comes to Trinity, she's able to feel the pain of people dying around her, but she's also able to absorb their energy as well as they are dying. And so once she's able to do that, she can then convert that energy into an explosive plasma field around her. And so it kind of makes her a very powerful kind of character. But we do see her right now kind of just living on the streets in LA. And we see her currently in pain. And the reason why? Because she's currently feeling somebody dying near her. And of course, they must have died near her because she had absorbed their energy. And so when you have two officers go in and check on her, they are killed in a matter of seconds because she had no choice but to go ahead and release that energy. And all you see is a small explosion around her in that area. But now we have to jump over to Rogue, Iceman, and also Beast. Now our three heroes, they are currently at a hospital that was nearby the explosion that came out of Trinity. Now for our heroes, they didn't hear nor see the explosion at all, so they had no idea what happened to that area that's nearby them. But we see our three heroes currently at the hospital, and the reason why? For a character called Infectia. Now, Infectia first appeared back in X Factor issue number 28. Now, she is the reason why we have Beast go back into his blue furball self again, because there was a period in time in X Factor comics where Beast did look normal, but thanks to Infectia, he was turned back into his good old blue furball self. Now, when it comes to Infectia, she has the ability to mutate other people around her. Now, the reason why you have our heroes at the hospital for her is because she had received the legacy virus. So now she's on the verge of dying. Now, here's the thing, because with her death, it kind of leads into a big conversation between Beast and Rogue. And what I mean by that statement is that for Rogue, she's very upset about the fact that Infectia could die from the virus. Really, any mutant who gets the virus is going to die. And so if Rogue gets the virus, then most likely she will die. And for Rogue, she hates the idea of dying because she did not have the chance to have a normal life because of her mutant ability, because she's not allowed to touch other people. Now for Beast, this virus is also kind of making him very upset as well. Because for Beast, he's a scientist, and he feels like by now he should have been able to find a cure for the virus. But unfortunately, he can't find a cure for the virus at all. But before you have our heroes being able to continue on with their conversation, they are then confronted by a character known as Dr. Milbury. Now, Dr. Milbury is supposed to be the doctor for Infectia, but that's a huge lie right there. And you'll see here in a moment. But for Dr. Milbury, he kind of tells the X-Men that he does not really care that Infectia is a mutant, because no matter what, she's still his patient. And so his goal right now is to hopefully find a way to save her life. Now, we also learned that for Infectia, the reason why she came over to LA is because for a scientist called Gordon Lafferts. Now, for Gordon Lafferts, he was a scientist who was trying to find a way to stop the virus, but also he was a mutant. Matter of fact, we kind of find out he was the first mutant to die from the legacy virus. But either way, she was kind of hoping that Gordon or his lab could possibly help her. Now, for Dr. Milbury, he also tells us that for Infectia, the only reason why she's still alive right now, because of her mutant ability, is actually fighting against the legacy virus. Since her mutant ability is really more the idea of being able to mutate other people, she's also kind of mutating the virus around her or herself as a way to fight against the virus. But here comes the big problem though. Once her powers really does fail and you have her powers go haywire thanks to the legacy virus, there's a huge possibility that everybody in the actual hospital could be infected by her powers in some kind of way. But either way, you do have Dr. Milbury take a blood sample of Infectia and he leaves the room. Now, you have the X-Men try their best to comfort Infectia as she is slowly dying off. But then a nurse walks into the room and asking for a blood sample. Now, like I said just a moment ago, Dr. Milbury just took a sample of Infectia's blood. Come to find out, that was not a real doctor at all. That was Mr. Sinister pretending to be a doctor so that he'll be able to sneak into the hospital to get a sample of Infectia's blood. And homeboy dipped out just like that. But now we had to sit down and briefly talk about the character known as Psylocke. Now, the only reason why I'm doing this because we may have some new fans who are joining us in our coverage over the X-Men. Now, real quick, when it comes to Betsy Braddock, she first appeared on the X-Men in the middle of the Mutant Massacre, but then joined the X-Men after that crossover. Now, when it came to Betsy Braddock, at first, she was just another team member. Now, she is a British woman, or she was a British woman. But either way, when it came to Betsy Braddock, at the tail end of her run on the X-Men at first, she became the leader of the team. Now, when it came to her being the leader, she had decided to use the Siege Perilous as a way to protect the X-Men from the Reavers. Now, when it comes to the Siege Perilous, it has the ability to give you a new life somewhere else in the world. But there is a catch to it because you may or may not remember anything from your past life. And so when it came to Betsy Braddock, she had just disappeared and we didn't see her for a short period of time. But then in the middle of Acts of Vengeance, she had reappeared, but as a Japanese woman, no longer as a British woman. Now, we did learn later on that it was thanks to the hand for the reason why she was now in the body of a Japanese woman. But this is Marvel Comics, so it got to make things even more complicated because you did have the return of the British version of Betsy Braddock. But the question was right now, who's the real Betsy? The one in the body of a Japanese woman or the one in the body of the British woman? We come to find out both are correct, and let me explain why. You see, there was another lady out there known as Kawanin. Now, when it came to Kawanin, when she had first reappeared in X-Men comics, we were kind of left to believe that maybe, just maybe, the two ladies had their minds to switch into each other's bodies. But like I said, this is Marvel Comics. We got to make things more complicated. So what actually happened was, in both of the bodies is both of the minds of both of the ladies. So, for example, in the body of the Japanese woman, she has half the mind of Betsy Braddock and half the mind of Kawanin. And the same thing goes for the British body of Betsy Braddock as well. It made things so crazy and wild in the 1990s for Betsy Braddock. Now, in our last video for the X-Men, we had learned that Kawanin is also dying from the legacy virus. So we're kind of left to believe that very soon this character is going to die by the hands of the legacy virus. But now we have to transition back over to Rogue, Beast, and also Iceman. Now you have our heroes trying their best to hunt down Sinister to kind of figure out what in the world is he trying to do when it comes to the blood sample of Infectia. Now, they do remember him telling them about the scientist known as Lafferts, the first person to get the legacy virus and die by the legacy virus, the first mutant to die from the legacy virus. Either way, you have our heroes head over to his lab. Now, they do realize the lab's being used by a bunch of homeless people, including Trinity as well. Now, for Rogue, she does run into Trinity, and she begins to talk about the idea of feeling the pain of different people around her, people who are most likely being affected by the legacy virus. She also said that she was trying her best to protect this lab for the guy who died from the virus. Of course, talking about Laffers. But then she runs off. Now, for Rogue, she kind of felt weird when it came to Trinity because she was kind of talking weird, but she felt like there's more to her story. So you have Rogue go ahead and leave to find her, while you have Iceman and Beast stay behind to kind of go through all the different files that were left behind by Laffers. Now, for Trinity, she does run into Sinister. Now, this is Sinister basically saying, hey, listen, I can help you if you allow me to help you out, but you must come with me to at least let me help you. Now, here's the thing. You have Rogue being able to catch up to Trinity, and so you have Rogue trying her best to protect Trinity from Sinister. But here comes the next big problem. You see, for Trinity, her powers are about to activate once again. And so you have Trinity just containing more and more energy of people who died in the area. And so, of course, she has to release all that energy as a explosive field around her. And so you have her being able to hit both Rogue and also Sinister. Now, you do have Beast and Iceman being able to catch up to Rogue and also to Sinister as well. Now, everyone is okay, including Trinity as well. Now, this kind of leads into a conversation I kind of want to have when it comes to the character of Beast. And let me explain. So when it comes to Beast, in X-Force comics, like down the road in the Krakoa era of X-Men comics, there were a lot of people who were very upset about the idea of how Beast was acting. They were kind of like, there's no way Beast would be able to cross all those different lines. But for me, I always felt like Beast was always just one step away from crossing lines that he thought himself would never actually cross. And the reason why I'm saying that, because in this book right here, you have Sinister say, here is the reason why I want to use Trinity for when it comes for me trying to find a cure for the legacy virus. Because with her mutant ability for Sinister, he's then able to kind of ease the pain for mutants who are dying from the legacy virus, which then means he'll be able to kind of continue his work on those people to hopefully find a cure for the legacy virus. But at the same time, he can turn her into a bloodhound to find other mutants out there who are dying from the legacy virus. Because for Trinity, like I said earlier, she can absorb the energy of people who are dying around her. And right now you have a lot of mutants who are dying from the legacy virus. So why not try to use her as a bloodhound to find other mutants out there so that he could use them as guinea pigs to hopefully find a cure for the legacy virus. Now, for Rogue and also Iceman, they hate the idea of him using her like that. But for Beast, it's kind of like, no, he's right. Like, I hate his idea, but he's right. We need her to be that bloodhound for him to use as a way to find a cure for the legacy virus. Because for Beast, unfortunately, he cannot find a cure for the virus right now. Not Charles Xavier, not Moira Taggart. It all comes down to Beast and also Sinister at the moment. And so it's kind of like, is it wrong for him to allow Sinister to take Trinity and use her as a bloodhound as a way to find a cure for the virus? It's Beast right now crossing that line. And he tells Iceman and he also tells Rogue, stand down. We are going to let him take her away, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to find a cure for that virus. Now, moving on from the idea of Beast crossing that line, we then jump forward to the very end of the book where you then have Beast right now with Infectia. Now, she's dying, like she's on the verge of death, but she had asked Beast earlier, I did not say anything about it, but she asked Beast earlier to kind of take her out of the hospital so that she'll be able to see the sunset one more time, and so, or the sunrise, sorry. And so you have Beast take Infectia to a cave where she'll be able to see the perfect view of the sunrise, and then she dies in his arms. And it's kind of like, man, that's wild. That's pretty crazy right there. And the book kind of ends on that note right there. But like I said, for me personally, there have been multiple times where Beast would have crossed that line or had crossed that line when it came to reaching a certain goal. But either way, this is where Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X-Men, we do pick up with X-Men Unlimited issue number 3. Now, guys, remember, when it comes to X-Men Unlimited, this was a series that was given to us in the early 1990s, but Marvel kind of used this series as a way to test out new people who were coming into Marvel Comics. So if you were trying to be a new writer or a new artist in the early 1990s, they gave you this series right here to test out your skills, to test out your work, to kind of see if fans would really like your work or not. Now, if they did, that would be great. You might get more work. If not, sorry, at least you try. There's the door. Now, when it came to X-Men Unlimited, it only came out every 3 months. So every quarter of the year, you would get a brand new book. 4 books, that was it for the entire year of this series. But when it comes to the first 2 issues of X-Men Unlimited, you could tell that it tied in more to Fatal Attractions. But after issue number 2, issue number 3 is more of like, hey, you know what? Let's use this series as a way to tell different kind of stories about different kind of characters out there in the world of X-Men comics. Like, for example, this one right here is all about Sabretooth. Now, for me personally, this was a very interesting book, but a very good one. And I do say right now, guys, this is one you want to read on your own. But getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with Maverick. Now, we see Maverick is right now in Spain. And matter of fact, he arrives at a church. Now, when he goes inside a church, he finds all these different dead bodies of different people who were part of the church, including the priest. And the priest comes at the very end of the first part of this section. But when you have Maverick walk in and find all these different dead bodies, he can tell that the person who had killed off all these people were doing this out of enjoyment. They enjoyed the whole idea of just killing these people. They took their time just cutting down folks left and right. But either way, while you have Maverick continue on deeper into the church, he finds Sabretooth. Now, this book is also doing a callback to the Sabretooth miniseries that we had covered a while back. And let me explain. You see, in that solo series, we had learned that Sabretooth had a character known as Birdie. Now, Birdie was a psychic, a very powerful one, but she had the ability to go into his mind to kind of ease the things in his mind. You see, when it came to Birdie, she would go into his mind and realize that for Sabretooth, this was a man who had gone through so many horrible things in his life. And so what she would do was go into his mind and block those things in his mind to at least give him the ability to have a somewhat normal day. But the problem was that every other day, or at least the next day, he would begin to remember all those worst things that he had gone through in his life. And of course, it made him go insane. Now, the problem was at the end of the solo series for Sabretooth, Birdie died. And so right now, he no longer has somebody in his corner being able to kind of ease those things in his mind. Now, the reason why you have Maverick here is to bring down Sabretooth. But then Maverick realized that if Sabretooth came here, he must have came here for a purpose. He would not just come to a random church and kill off all these people for the heck of it. There has to be a reason. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the priest is the main reason why he's here. But the priest is connected to other people. But once you have Maverick lose to Sabretooth, Sabretooth leaves. But it tells Maverick, you need to figure out why I came here and killed off the priest. But now we have to jump over to Germany. Now, when we do, we pick up with a character known as Kurt. Now, when it comes to Kurt, he is a billionaire. But we do see him right now showing off different pictures of different people who were killed off by Sabretooth. Now, here's the catch. Every single person, including him, they're all connected. And the reason why, because there was a job done many years ago to give every single person some kind of power in this world. And so for Kurt, of course, he's now a billionaire. But that kind of power came from that job. But it does seem like right now, for Sabretooth, he's going after all those different people who are all connected. killing them one by one. Now, when it comes to Kurt, we see him talking to a character known as Comcast. Now, when it comes to Comcast, he is also a mutant. He has the ability to store data in his mind. Now, really, who cares? Moving on. When it comes to Comcast, he is a mercenary. And so, of course, is Kurt trying to say, I need your help to protect me from Sabretooth. Now, Comcast, he declines the job very quickly. But he does say, listen, I do know two other people who may be able to help you out when it comes to protecting you from Sabretooth. That will be Wolverine or possibly Maverick. Now, when it comes to Comcast, he realized that there's one more connection to Kurt, and that will be the Yoshida clan. Now, as we all know, that clan is very important because their last leader was Mariko, the lover of Wolverine. And so once you have Comcast realize they're also connected, he's all like, never mind, there's only one person now that you can call, and that will be Maverick. Because for Wolverine, he's trying his best to not get involved with anything when it comes to that clan because of his dead lover. But now we have to transition over to Gambit and also Rogue. Now, these two characters are now coming back from what seems to be a date, but right now we're seeing Gambit being very scared of the fact that Rogue is driving because I guess she is a horrible driver. But while you have our two heroes on the way back home to the mansion, they don't realize they're being watched by Maverick. And so when they do arrive back at the mansion, they're then confronted by Bishop. Now for Bishop, this man right here is just upset. And the reason why, because these two characters did not truly follow the security protocols when it comes to coming back home from somewhere else outside of the school. But either way, while you had the three characters talking to one another, they are then attacked by good old Maverick. Now, here's the thing. Okay, guys. So for Maverick, he had a game plan, right? His game plan was to sneak into the mansion, grab Logan, and get the heck out of there without anybody noticing because he needs Logan's help to bring down Sabretooth. Now, for me personally, I'm kind of like, why not just go to the door, knock on the door, ask for Logan. If he's there and he says yes, then leave without causing so much commotion. Because while you had Bishop, Gambit, and Rogue outside, he thought, you know what? I gotta make sure these three guys don't see me. So I'm gonna hit them with gas to hopefully knock them out. Now for Rogue and Gambit, they were easily taken out. But for Bishop, he was kind of able to hang on there for just a few more minutes. And so we're kind of left to believe that, you know what, we might get a battle between Bishop and Maverick. What kind of battle would that be like? But you have Charles, Xavier, and Beast arrive. Now, when they do arrive, it's really more of them saying like, hey, listen, Maverick, we know that you're here looking for Logan. We want to tell you that Logan's not here anymore. Like, that dude left here weeks ago. Now, as we all know, when it came to Fatal Attractions, when it came to Magneto, he had ripped off the adamantium off the bones of Wolverine. And so after that, Logan had left. He disappeared. And no one knows where he went to. And so it's now them telling Maverick, like, you came here, seems like, for no good reason. Now, you do have the X-Men go ahead and offer their help. So it will be Beast, Rogue, Gambit, and Bishop helping out Maverick to hunt down Sabretooth and to hopefully stop him. Now, I want to jump back over to Sabretooth, and here's the reason why. Because like I said earlier, for Sabretooth, he's going after different people who are all connected to one another. Now, like I said earlier as well, these people had worked together to gain power across the world. But here comes the big catch. You see, there was somebody in their organization that was going to basically expose everyone to the public. And of course, they wanted that person gone, and they had hired Sabretooth. Now, that small piece of information is going to be very important for later on in this video, but we do pick up with Sabretooth having a meeting with Comcast. Now, when it comes to Comcast, like I said earlier, the dude has the ability to retrieve and store data. And so for Sabretooth, he came over to Comcast to get some information because Sabretooth is still looking for a psychic, somebody to replace Birdie, to do the job on his mind. Now for Comcast, he does know somebody who could possibly help him, a possible psychic that's currently with the Yoshida clan. Now, let's not forget, the Yoshida clan was also part of that huge network of people who were trying to get power. And so when it comes to Sabretooth, he's all like, perfect, because I was heading there next. And so now he's hoping to find a psychic there to help clear his mind. Now, I want to jump back over to the X-Men because right now you have the X-Men on the Blackbird on their way over to where Sabretooth might appear at next. Now, for our heroes, they were able to get that location thanks to Comcast calling them up. But for Beast, he's kind of more of like, listen, I want to have a better understanding of the mind of Sabretooth. And the reason why, because for Sabretooth, they already know that this man's a cold killer. But the problem is, though, this man done a lot of work in the past. But something about this assignment is making Sabretooth go crazy. And the question is right now, why? What happened on this assignment in the past that is currently making him go crazy? Now, for Maverick, he does not care at all. He's kind of like, listen, Sabretooth is a killer that has to be put down. So I don't understand why you're trying your best to understand the guy. When we find him, we have to kill him. But for the X-Men, they don't kill. And that's the problem right there. Because for Maverick, it's all like, listen, y'all may not kill, but I'm telling you right now, if I get the chance to kill Lost Sabretooth, I'm going to take that shot to kill him off. Now, this kind of leads into a conversation where you kind of have Rogue kind of bring up the fact that she was a bad guy, right? And so with Rogue being a bad guy at first and fighting alongside with Mystique, luckily for her, she found the X-Men, or the X-Men took her in, and she turned into a good guy. And the same thing for Gambit. He was a thief, but luckily for him, he found the X-Men, they took him in, and now he's also a good guy. And so it kind of seems like Rogue trying to say that there's a possibility that for Sabretooth, he could turn into a good guy if he gets the right kind of help. But for Maverick, he believes that he already knows the actual future for Sabretooth. Now for Bishop, the guy is from the future. He says, dude, tell you right now, you don't know what could possibly happen in the future. And the reason why? Because the future is always changing. And so with that being said, you don't know technically when it comes to Sabretooth, he could be a good guy or not. But let's jump back over to Kurt. Now, guys, remember, Kurt was the guy who basically told us what's happening right now to all those different people across the world who are all connected to one another, including him. Because to Kurt, they all did that job together and they all hired Sabretooth together. But either way, he knew that sooner or later, he would be the next target. Now, he tried to hire Maverick. Unfortunately, Maverick did not answer the call. But luckily for Kurt, you had Comcast call Maverick, who was with the X-Men. And so now you have Rogue, Bishop, and also Gambit going over the home of Kurt to hopefully protect him from Sabretooth. But the problem is when they do arrive and when they find Kurt, Kurt is already dead. The dude died that quick. And the reason why? Because Sabretooth is already there. And that leads into a battle between our heroes and Sabretooth. Now, this battle is very short-lived because you do have Sabretooth being able to get the jump on Rogue and also Gambit. But after doing that, he's then able to take them out very easily. Just like that, bam, bam, 2 of the 3 heroes are taken down. Now, for Bishop, he's the last man standing, and he has the shot. But the problem is you have Sabretooth use Rogue as a shield, as a way to protect him from Bishop. Now, for Bishop, he kind of believes that he has the shot, but he does not take it, allowing Sabretooth to get away. Now, for Sabretooth, he does tell Bishop one thing. He kind of wishes that Bishop did take the shot and hopefully did kill him off. But either way, he was now able to get away and go on to his next target. But now we have to jump over to Beast and also Maverick as they arrive in Japan. Now, when they do arrive in Japan, they head straight over to the home of the Yoshida clan. Now, the Yoshida clan, like I said earlier, was being led by Mariko. Now, for Mariko, the ex-lover of Wolverine, her main goal was to turn the clan around into a force of good like it was back in the old days. But unfortunately, her father led the clan into a period of time where it was part of the criminal underworld of Japan. Either way, after her death, you had her half brother step in, and that would be the Silver Samurai. So he's now in charge of the entire clan. Now, for Silver Samurai, he's kind of wondering why in the world is Beast here to help protect him and his clan as well. Because for Silver Samurai, the X-Men are his enemies. But for Beast, it's kind of like, listen, you are a mutant who needs our help. But also, we are a team of mutants that deal with big mutant problems, like Sabretooth. And that's why we're here, to help you no matter what, even though you are our enemy. But then you have Sabretooth arrive at the home of the clan. Now, once he does arrive, we already know why he's here for. He's here for that psychic. And so you have Sabretooth being able to find the psychic the clan was trying to protect. But here comes the big catch. You see, the psychic is an old man whose mind has been completely destroyed. And here's the reason why. You see, we got to go back to when the bombs went off in Hiroshima. Because when those bombs went off, a lot of people died. But for this old man, his mind was connected to all those people's minds. And so he felt their deaths. And so that's why his mind is broken. Now, things get even crazier because you didn't have Sabretooth grab the old man. And when he does, the old man is able to connect his mind to everybody's mind in the room. But everyone's mind goes into the mind of Sabretooth to understand why is he on this huge quest to go after people from his past. And so we kind of find out that on that last mission where he had to go over to Japan to get the person who was trying to expose the other people who were trying to gain power, he was able to kill off that guy, but also his wife. But no one told Sabretooth that there would be a child there. And so Sabretooth, unfortunately, had to kill off the child as well. And so ever since then, that has been haunting his mind. And Birdie was able to kind of lock that pain away. But with her being gone, that pain keeps coming back over and over and over again. Now, once you have our heroes being able to leave his mind, Sabretooth is already gone. But the X-Men, they know where he's going next. Because before you had Beast dive into the mind of Sabretooth, Beast said, we also have somebody who is a psychic. We have 3 of them: Jean Grey, Psylocke, Charles Xavier. And so once you had Sabretooth being able to regain control of his body, he left Japan and began to head straight over to where Charles Xavier is at. And so when we jump over to Sabretooth, we see him arriving at the home of Charles Xavier, trying to sneak into the home to get the jump on Charles. But the thing is, Charles knew that, well, Sabretooth was coming. And so you have Charles being able to use his powers on Sabretooth to keep him away. Now, unfortunately for Sabretooth, the X-Men were there as well, and they were able to kind of jump into the battle as well. But the problem is that as the battle goes on, you have Sabretooth being able to once again get a hold of somebody, this time Charles Xavier, and make him a hostage. Honestly, with Charles Xavier being a hostage, it does not last that long because you do have Bishop being able to get the shot on Sabretooth. And with that shot, he was able to take Sabretooth down. But here's the thing. For Charles Xavier, he wants to help out Sabretooth. He wants to make him better. And remember, the only way to do that is to ease the pain in the mind of Sabretooth. And so with Birdie gone, he has been looking for a psychic. And right now, he has one. Charles Xavier. And so you have Charles tell the team like, hey, listen, I'm going into his mind to hopefully help him. And so just like that, we see Charles go to the mind of Sabretooth. Now, for me personally, I love the idea of Charles Xavier going into the mind of Sabretooth. And let me explain why here, guys, because once you have Charles inside the mind, he looks around and he realizes that Sabretooth does remember every single person that he has killed over the years. And the thing is, for Charles and us fans and most people in Marvel Comics, they believe that for Sabretooth, he just kills to kill. Like he loves the idea of killing people and he tries his best to not think about the people that he had killed. But it's Charles saying that's not completely true. For Sabretooth, he does remember every single person that he had killed, and it really does bother him a whole lot. But either way, for Charles, he realized that to help out Sabretooth, he has to go deeper to the mind of Sabretooth, find the source of all that pain and anger in the mind of Sabretooth. And so we get reminded that for Sabretooth, when he was a young boy, when his powers first manifested, right, he gained fangs and claws. Now, we do learn later on in X-Men comics that he did kill his brother over a cookie, but it was an accident. But when it came to his father, he hated what his son turned into. And so he threw Sabretooth into the basement of their home. Now, when he did that, he was kind of like, no, you're going to stay down there. And every once a day or two, I might try to throw some kind of animal down there for you to kill so that you'll be able to survive. You have to kill that animal to get the food that you need to eat to survive. And so it's the book telling us that is the reason why he's the way he is, because he had to kill over and over and over again. But at the same time, that anger was growing inside his body towards his father, the hatred towards his father. But either way, this is a source of all that anger. This is the source for all that bloodthirsty behavior he shows in all different Marvel comics. It's all because of this right here. Now, for Charles, he realized what Brody was doing was making him forget about these things to help ease his mind. But for Charles, he says that was the wrong move. You need those things. You need this part of your life right here to be remembered so that you are able to properly heal up, to become the man that you want to be. And so this leads into the ending of the book where we do learn that for Sabretooth, he's going to be at the school of Charles Xavier as a prisoner, but at the same time going through a therapy session. Because right now you have Charles saying, listen here, you're going to stay in here in the danger room and go through this projection of the boathouse. But we're going to work day in and day out to properly heal your mind. And it kind of works out because with Wolverine now being gone, you won't have Wolverine there trying to kill off Sabretooth. So allowing Charles a chance to actually try to heal the mind of Sabretooth. But this is where we're going to end. Okay, so let's get back into our coverage over the X-Men. Now, guys, we're kind of in that phase where we're going to jump back and forth between Uncanny X-Men and also X-Men. So you might have a lot of videos that could be possibly just one single issue being covered for that video. But with that being said, we're going to pick up with Uncanny X-Men issue number 308. Now, with this issue alone, we are basically beginning the process of Scott Summers and Jean Grey getting married. Now, at the very end of this video, we're going to see Jean Grey propose to Cyclops and him saying yes, but before we can dive into that moment, there are some things that kind of lead into that big special moment for those two characters. And really, as we get into the opening pages for today's video, we do pick up with Scott Summers and Jean Grey just walking outside to have some alone time with one another. Now, while they're walking around, you didn't have Jean Grey begin to talk about the whole idea when she realized that Scott Summers was the one. And so we get this flashback to the early days of the X-Men, the first class, Scott Summers, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and also Angel. Now, for Jean Grey, she was the new kid at the school. But anyway, she only knew that Cyclops' code name was Cyclops. She had no idea what his real name was. And so because of that, she went to go find him and ask him what was his real name. And he told her, my real name is Scott Summers. Now, that was the moment where she kind of realized that she had a crush on him. But in present time, she's saying, that was when I realized that you could be the one for me. Now, when you had Scott Summers say his real name to Jean Grey, the dude was very shy and was not really paying attention when he was on the ladder, and so he fell off. Now, Jean Grey was able to use her powers to save him, but again, it kind of shows that for Scott Summers, he was very embarrassed around her, but also again have a crush on her as well. Now, if you are a hardcore X-Men fan, you already know that every once in a while we get a book where you have the X-Men trying to relax. And usually with them trying to relax, it's kind of like playing baseball, playing softball, playing basketball, playing football, some kind of sport, heck, even kickball. But either way, for the X-Men right now, they're trying to rack up all the leaves around the mansion. Now, for Beast, unfortunately, he ruins all the piles of leaves that were raked up by Storm and others. And so because of that, it kind of leads into the idea of just goofing off and possibly playing a game of football against one another. And so it's kind of cool to see the X-Men relax for the time being, because this team has gone through a lot since 1991 up to 1993. Even though the book tells us that it's only been like 1 year and that's really it. But now getting into another flashback, we do pick up with Charles Xavier and Jean Grey. Now with this flashback, it's really more of Charles Xavier kind of reminding us as the readers that before Jean Grey had joined his school, she had a hard time controlling her powers. And so what Charles did was he put blockers in her mind to allow her powers to develop at the right pace, in their own pace. But the thing is, those blockers are now going away. And for Charles and Jean Grey, they don't know why at first. But then Charles realized why those blockers are going away. Because Jean Grey's powers trying to reach out to somebody she really cares for. And of course, that would be Scott Summers, Cyclops. And so it kind of shows again how powerful their love was, even way back then in the early days of the X-Men. But now we jump back over to the present day, and when we do, we pick up with Scott Summers admitting to Jean Grey that she has always been his inspiration. Now for Jean Grey, she's very surprised about that, and the reason why, because Scott is a natural born leader, but Scott cites that behind every great man, there's a great woman showing him how to do it right. And so we get another flashback of why Scott Summers thinks that. Now, for Scott Summers, his example is the whole idea of when Jean Grey was supposedly the Phoenix. Now, when I say supposedly, I mean that she never was the Phoenix. Let me explain, because for Marvel, things got a tad bit crazy. You see, in the early days of X-Men comics in the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix saga, we were kind of left to believe that Jean Grey was actually the Phoenix. But in reality, Jean Grey was never the Phoenix. You see, what happened was the Phoenix realized that Jean Grey was dying. And so to save her life, you had the Phoenix put Jean Grey inside some kind of cocoon at the bottom of Jamaican Bay so that she could properly heal up. And then you had the Phoenix turn herself into a clone of Jean Grey. And so for the rest of the X-Men, they had believed the entire time that the Phoenix or Jean Grey was the Phoenix. But in reality, it was just the Phoenix pretending to be Jean Grey. Now, when it came to the Phoenix, she also copied the mind of Jean Grey to make sure she think and acted just like Jean Grey would. And so for the Phoenix, over time, surely thought that she was Jean Grey, falling in love with Cyclops, trying to be an X-Men. Now, as time went on, at the very end of the Dark Phoenix saga, when it came to the Phoenix, she had the ability to wipe out solar systems left and right. Now, she did kill off one solar system, but she still had the power to kill off more. But something held her back. And it's Scott saying, when she had copied your mind and copied your body, your mind was in there fighting against what she wanted to do. And I realized that you're so strong that even though you're not there, you still have control over other people who are trying to be like you. Now, this leads into Scott Summers and Jean Grey having a conversation with one another about the whole idea of can they have a family? Now, when it came to Scott Summers, he did propose to Jean Grey, and she said no. Now, the reason why she said no, because of Rachel Summers. Let me explain. So for Jean Grey, she always felt like she had control over her own life. Like her life is not planned out for her. But then out of nowhere, she met Rachel Summers, her daughter from a future timeline, a future alternate timeline. And so when she met Rachel, she believed that no matter what, she'll end up with Scott Summers. They'll get married. They'll have a family. She no longer had that choice like she wanted for her entire life. And so when Scott did propose to her, she said no. She wanted control over her life. But now she realized the future is never set in stone. Now, the only reason why she thinks that because, well, she did give many examples, but for me, the best one was Charles Xavier opening the doors to allow Sabretooth to stay at the school so that Charles is able to heal the mind of Sabretooth. For Jean Grey, she thought that would never happen, but it did. And so that kind of leads into the whole fact that it's Jean Grey telling Cyclops that she believes that their love is just so strong that it should overcome anything, overcome destiny. Because now she realized that if they do had a strong love, then most likely that dark future where Rachel comes from will not happen. That dark future where Bishop comes from won't happen. That they have the ability to overcome anything that comes in their way because of their love. Now, in this whole conversation, it's Jean Grey saying like, hey, will you marry me? And so by the time we get to the end of this section, it's Cyclops basically saying yes. And so now these two are engaged to get married. And this leads into the ending of today's storyline. Now, I kind of wish I did a better job when it came to planning out my videos. And the reason why, because this is actually a Thanksgiving issue. But unfortunately, I did not do a good job planning out my videos. So this video comes out a week or possibly 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Either way, when it comes to Cyclops and Jean Grey, they make their big announcement to everybody there like, hey, we're engaged. And everybody is excited except for Charles Xavier. And the reason why? Because he has some concerns about the idea of these two characters getting married. But he says, you know what? For the sake of the great day it is, I'm going to keep my concerns to myself. And so this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we do pick up with issue number 28. Now, here's the thing. This issue is all about the whole idea of Sabretooth now being at the school of Charles Xavier. Now, technically, Sabretooth is not really an X-Men. Matter of fact, he's there for a therapy session. Because remember, when it comes to Sabretooth, this man has gone through a lot in his entire life. And so a lot of times he remembers all the bad things that happened to him in his past. Now, he also had a character known as Birdie, who was a psychic who was able to go into his mind to kind of help him ease the pain in his mind by sometimes putting blockers on those bad memories. But Birdie died a while back. And so for Sabretooth, all those bad things that happened to him, it just keeps replaying in his mind over and over again, making him go crazy. And so for Charles Xavier, his goal is to have to pick up where Birdie left off at. It's really more of, let's try to heal your mind completely. Because the problem was you were trying to forget those things. You need those things to be remembered as a way to help you become a better person. And so right now for Sabretooth, he's locked away in the danger room so that Charles and other psychics are able to give him therapy sessions to hopefully help heal his mind once and for all. But the problem is, with him being there, it kind of affects the other members of the school. Like, for example, Jubilee. For Jubilee, she knows especially that when it comes to Wolverine and Sabretooth, there is a lot of bad blood between those two characters. And so with him being there, she begins to have nightmares. Like, for example, it's Sabretooth. He broke out of his prison. He went after Scott, killed Scott Summers, killed Jean Grey, killed off Wolverine, killing off every other member of the X-Men. She's the last person standing. Unfortunately, by the end of her nightmare, she's also killed off just like that. And so it kind of shows that with him being there, it's affecting everyone at that school. Jubilee is having nightmares because now she's afraid of the possibility that she could die by the hands of this monster. So with her freaking out, she wakes up screaming. Jean Grey runs into the room, and Jean Grey knows what the problem is all about. The whole idea of Sabretooth being at the school. And so you have Jean Grey being that big sister or that mother figure for Jubilee, being able to kind of ease the pain that she's going through. But at the same time for Jean Grey, she also hates the idea of Sabretooth being there. Now, there is a special reason why him being there really bothers Jean Grey. And I'll explain why here at the very end of this video. But for right now, it's Jean Grey saying, I need a meeting with some of the older members of the X-Men, like Storm, Beast, and also Cyclops. And so once you have everyone come together for this meeting, of course, they are talking about Sabretooth being there, being an actual problem. Because again, it does affect every single person at that school in some kind of way. But you didn't have Jean Grey bring up the fact that she does not understand why Charles believes that they can turn Sabretooth around. And here's the reason why. Because for her, Sabretooth is a killer. He's a grown man who knows what he's doing with his powers, going out of his way to kill people. Now, before you have that part get brought up, you have someone say, well, here's the thing. Rogue was also evil. Gambit was a thief. And also Wolverine was also rough around the edges, but Charles took them in, and look at them now. They are great X-Men to have by our side. So what if we are able to turn Sabretooth around? But like I said, he is a grown man who definitely knew what he was doing. Wolverine killed, but at the same time, not as much as Sabretooth or have fun doing it. And for Rogue, she was just evil, not really killing people. Gambit was just a thief. This man right here is a cold-blood killer. Now, at the same time for Cyclops, it's more of like, well, we have to understand that again, for Sabretooth, this man has gone through a lot in his life. So most likely he's having a hard time being the man he should be. And so you have some folks on the side of Charles Xavier, but you have some folks on the side of Jean Grey. Now, we also get reminded of the whole Psylocke and Kawanin thing. And guys, I know most of you guys know the whole idea of these two characters, but just in case we do have somebody joining us in our coverage over the X-Men, I kind of got to sit down and explain the whole idea of Psylocke and Kawanin. So when it came to Marvel Comics in the 1980s, they introduced a character known as Psylocke to the X-Men. Now, it was not really her first appearance, but when she did appear in the X-Men books, it was in the middle of the Mutant Massacre. Now, after the massacre, she did join the X-Men. As a matter of fact, there was a point where she became team leader of the team. Now, when she was team leader, she had decided to use the Siege Perilous as a way to save the lives of the X-Men. Now, here's the problem. The Siege Perilous has the ability to give you a new life somewhere else around the world, but there is a catch. You may or may not remember anything from your past life. Now for Psylocke, as she went through the Siege Perilous, we lost her for a good amount of pages, well really books actually. And so we had no idea where she went to. But when she did reappear, she was now in the body of a Japanese woman. At first, she was a British woman who's now in the body of a Japanese woman. Now, after a while, we did learn that it was the Hand who had technically had a hand in the reason why she was in the body of a Japanese woman. But then after a while, you did have the return of the British version of Betsy Braddock appear. And then we learned that there was another woman out there known as Kawanin who had her mind messed with as well. Now you would think like, okay, that just means that their minds were just possibly switched into each other's bodies. But no, what actually happened was when it came to Betsy Braddock and also Kawanin, their minds were put in both of the bodies of the British woman and the Japanese woman as well. So, for example, in the body of the Japanese woman, she has half the mind of Kawanin and half the mind of Bessie Braddock as well. The same thing goes for the British woman as well. She has half the minds of both of the ladies. Now, we have learned that the British woman of Bessie Braddock and also Kawanin got the legacy virus. Now, as you all know, the legacy virus is a big deal right now because it was created by strife that is slowly killing off the mutant race left and right. And there is no cure at the moment. So we're kind of left to believe that very soon the British version of Bessie Braddock is going to die by the hands of the legacy virus. Now, we finally jump over to Sabretooth. Now, he's locked away inside the danger room, but we do see here that you have Moira McTaggart call out Charles Xavier. And the reason why, because, well, it's time to give Sabretooth his medicine. And what she means by that statement is more of like, hey, we need you to come in here and go into his mind to help ease the pain in his mind to calm him down, because it has been a while and now he has gone crazy again inside the danger room. He's tearing up the place. Now, for Charles Xavier, because he was so busy with Bessie Braddock, the British one, they sent in Psylocke, the Japanese version of Bessie Braddock, into the danger room to kind of help give his medicine, because she's also a psychic. Now, when it comes to Bessie Braddock, or really Psylocke here, the Japanese Psylocke, the problem for her is that to be able to access the mind of somebody, she has to use her psychic blade to get into the mind of people. She has to touch their mind with the blade. But the problem is Sabretooth is just too fast for her, too strong for her. But also it's kind of like, you can't help me because you're kind of like me. Your mind is broken. Again, a call back to the whole idea of she has half the mind of Bessie Braddock and half the mind of Kawana in her body. But either way, you have Sabretooth being able to take down Psylocke and throw her out of the danger room. And he says, I want the redhead. I want Jean Grey here and now. Now, there is a special reason why he wants Jean Grey, but again, I'm going to save that for the end of this video. But after that, we do learn that Rogue and Gambit are going inside to give Sabretooth his next meal. Now, this conversation is really important for so many reasons. And the reason why, because, okay, when you have Rogue and Gambit go inside, you have Sabretooth begin to talk in a way where it's all like, hey, Rogue, I want to tell you right now, you don't know everything about your man. That in reality, this man has been lying to you about so many different things. And you should know that he should go ahead and tell you how him and I know each other, but also the other secrets that he's currently hiding from you. And for Gambit, it's really him trying to make sure that Sabretooth does not really say anything at all that could really expose Gambit. Now, this leads into a whole huge thing for the character of Gambit down the road when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. Now, there is a second thing why this conversation is so important, because you didn't have Sabretooth say, hey, Rogue, so you are the adoptive daughter to Mystique, right? Okay, cool, listen. Did you know that you have a brother? Now, you would think like, okay, you know what? The whole idea of Mystique and also Sabretooth having a love child together could be that brother that he is talking about. But it does kind of hint that, you know, there is a third child of Mystique out there. And this leads into the whole idea of Rogue finding out that Nightcrawler is the son of Mystique. Now, you do have Jean Grey and Cyclops go out of their way to confront Charles Xavier. Now, when they do, it's really more of Jean Grey kind of questioning Charles Xavier, or the whole decision of allowing Sabretooth to stay at the school. For Cyclops, he's more support for now, but at the end of the section, he kind of realized what is going on when it comes to Jean Grey. But for Jean Grey, she says, Charles, I feel like the only reason why you allow this man to stay at our school because you feel bad what happened with Magneto. And honestly, you could say that, because for Charles Xavier, he always felt like he could have been there to help out Magneto, to bring Magneto back to the side of good again, but he failed, and he had no choice but to use his powers to shut down the mind of Magneto. And so because of that, is Jean Grey saying, because what happened to him, you're trying your best to kind of undo your mistakes or kind of rebalance yourself by trying to help out Sabretooth. Now, for Charles, he says, I understand why you believe that, but let me tell you right now, me helping out Sabretooth, it still ties into my beliefs. The whole idea of mutants and humans being able to live together in harmony, but at the same time, still helping out mutants who are in need, like Sabretooth. Now, for Cyclops, he kind of realized what's really happening here. For Jean Grey, yes, she hates the idea of him being there, Sabretooth, but she also realized with him being there, it also kind of goes at Wolverine in a way. Because as we all know, Wolverine and, well, Sabretooth, they got some bad blood between each other. But at the same time, it's Cyclops knowing and acknowledging that when it comes to Jean Grey, she has hard feelings for Wolverine. And so with Sabretooth being there, it's kind of like a spit in the face towards the other man she loves, Wolverine. And so you have Jean Grey go out of her way to confront Sabretooth. Now, when she does, guys, when she does, oh, Jean Grey makes a statement. Now, before we dive into her actual statement, I want to jump over to, well, Sabretooth, because the reason why he wanted Jean Grey is all because she is another person that Logan was in love with. Somebody that he can go after and possibly kill. That's why he wanted Jean Grey, to get something at Wolverine, or use someone else to get to Wolverine, sorry. But for Jean Grey, she's kind of like, no, I came here to also make a statement as well. Because she says, I realize why you hated Logan so much. Because he's the man you always wanted to be. But unfortunately, you can't become the man like that because the way you are. Because you are unable to deal with your mistakes, to deal with your failures. And that is why you are unable to be the man you want to be. A man like Logan. And so once she says that to him, but also use her powers as a way to beat down on him, you can kind of tell that she actually hit him right in the heart. And he kind of realized that she is right. And so he just gives up and she leaves the room after beating down on him, but also making that statement as well. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you do have Jubilee go be the one the next following day to deliver food over to Sabretooth. And when she does, he tells Jubilee to tell Jean Grey, like, hey, listen, I'm going to tell her, like, she's way more stronger or better person than Logan ever was. That he had a good one. Like, Jean Grey should have been his girl. And if he did got her, he got the right one for him. And the book ends on that note. And I'm like, dang, it's a one-part story arc, but it's really good. It's really good. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we do pick up with X-Men issue number 29 from the 1991 series. Now, here's the thing about this issue alone. It kind of begins the whole process of us seeing Psylocke getting together with Archangel because, okay, in later comics down the road that we're going to talk about when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, we do get some moments in time where you have Psylocke and Archangel being a legit couple. And for me, this is the starting point of the reason why those two characters have became a couple in X-Men comics. Because you do have Psylocke and also Archangel going over to the Hellfire Club. Now, before we dive into the whole idea of the return of the Hellfire Club, and also Psylocke and also Archangel becoming a couple, we have to jump over to the opening pages of the storyline where we picked up with Sabretooth about a fight against Psylocke. Now, when it comes to Sabretooth, we have to remember that he's now staying at the school of Charles Xavier. And the reason why, because, okay, for Charles Xavier, he truly believes that he has the ability ability to cure the mind of Sabretooth, because Sabretooth is a wild dude. The dude will kill anybody standing in his path. And so for Charles, he believes that he has the ability to cure Sabretooth, to turn him into a better person. And so the reason why we're seeing Sabretooth fighting against Psylocke is because it's part of the training thing going on with Charles Xavier. He wants to see if Sabretooth is able to hold back when it comes to fighting against somebody else and not turn into no bloodthirsty character who wants to kill people off. He wanted to see Sabretooth being able to fight against Psylocke in a nice, friendly sparring session. Now, while you have the two characters fighting against one another, you have Charles Xavier and also Beast watching over the two characters. Now, Archangel is also there as well, but he comes in a tad bit later when it comes to the two characters battling against each other. Now, for Archangel, he quickly shows us that he is somewhat jealous of the whole idea of Psylocke being in there with Sabretooth. Now, when I say being jealous, it's really more of that he sees Psylocke begin to flirt with Sabretooth, because as the battle goes on, you have the two characters begin to talk to one another. And while they're talking to one another, it's really more the two characters flirting with each other. It's Psylocke saying like, hey, she would not mind getting with Sabretooth. And so for Archangel, he's really expressing the whole idea that he is jealous, but at the same time, he does not want to admit it. And for Charles Xavier and also Beast, they're like, hey man, you sound a tad bit jealous there. Like, do you want to tell us something? But you do have Archangel just walk away. And really, you have Psylocke also walk away from the battle with Sabretooth, but again, kind of giving us another hint that she would not mind being with Sabretooth. Now, I want to shift our focus over to Archangel, and here's the reason why. Because for Archangel, we get the whole idea that he is lonely because he has no one to be there with. At first, when he came to Archangel in the early days of X-Men comics, his main goal was to get with Jean Grey. But as we all know, Jean Grey chose two other people, and she's now marrying one of those two people, and that would be Cyclops. Now, there was another person named Candy, but as we all know, she was killed off by Cameron Hodge in the earlier parts of our coverage over the X-Men. And then for Archangel, when he was just a regular guy, Apocalypse happened and turned him into Archangel. And so for Archangel, he's kind of like, I have no one in my life. In the last few years of my life, the only thing I have gone through is just more drama left and right. It's him kind of wondering, like, will his life ever turn around? Now, that is the moment where you have Jubilee kind of skate into the room. Yes, I say skate because she's roller skating inside the house. But either way, you have Jubilee tell Archangel that he has mail. And of course, she hands the mail over to him. And this begins the whole idea of the return of the Hellfire Club. Now, the Hellfire Club has been around for a good while in Marvel Comics, but it's also a global club. You have different clubhouses across the entire world so that different members can join no matter where they are. Now, for the Hellfire Club, you gotta have some money to be able to properly join. Now, there is the thing called the Inner Circle, and the Inner Circle were a group of people who work behind the scenes to accomplish different kind of goals for their own personal needs. Like, for example, you had Emma Frost and also Sebastian Shaw, and the list goes on. Now, for the Inner Circle, right now, there is no Inner Circle because each member of the Inner Circle is dead or currently just not being used by Marvel Comics at this time point. And so right now, there is no Inner Circle, but it does seem like somebody's trying to bring back the Inner Circle, and that would be Shinobi Shaw, the son of Sebastian Shaw. Now, the reason why you had Archangel get a letter from the Hellfire Club is because, well, his father was a member of the Hellfire Club, which means that no matter what, the children of the previous member are also now members of the Hellfire Club. So for Archangel, he has a free pass to join just like that. But Shinobi Shaw was the one who has sent that letter over to Archangel. Now for Psylocke, she does walk into the room as well, and she also sees that Archangel got a letter from the Hellfire Club. And the thing is, she remembers going to the London branch of the Hellfire Club many times. Now, her family, they also have money. They also were part of the Hellfire Club, which means that with her being the daughter of her parents, she's also now a member of the Hellfire Club as well. Now, for Archangel and also Psylocke, they kind of agreed to go together to figure out what is happening right now with the Hellfire Club and the possibility of the return of the Inner Circle. Now, when it comes to our X-Force / New Warriors Child's Play video, we had talked about the whole idea of that storyline happening at the exact same time as this book came out. And so just for like 2 pages, we kind of see Archangel and also Psylocke arrive at the Hellfire Club branch in Manhattan. And they do run into Night Thrasher, who's also a member of the Hellfire Club as well. Now, he's only there for like 4 or 5 panels, and then he disappears just like that. But I want to bring it back up because, again, in our Child's Play video, we had a brief moment where we did learn that that storyline took place at the exact time as this storyline took place as well. But either way, you did have Psylocke and also Archangel be confronted by a character known as Ronald Parvenu. Now, Ronald Parvenu first appeared back in Wolverine issue number 45, and we had talked about that issue. He was someone who was able to capture a special kind of creature, and that was really it. And that was a long time ago. And so you kind of get the idea that there's a possibility that he might become even more important character in the world of X-Men comics, but telling you right now, he's not going to be. Now, once you have our 2 heroes walk away from him, they're then confronted by another character known as Tessa. Now, Tessa, y'all know her as Sage in current time in X-Men comics, but back in the old days, she was just Tessa, somebody who had the ability of being a psychic. Now, she also had the mind of a supercomputer as well, but that came a tad bit later. Either way, we do see her using her abilities to knock out both Archangel and Psylocke, and there is a good reason why. And we kind of find out it's all because of Shinobi Shaw. You see, for Shinobi, what he wants to do is bring in a new inner circle. Now, let's not forget that for Shinobi Shaw, he was the one who killed off his father, Sebastian. Now, the reason why he killed off his father is because, one, he hated his father, but also because for Shinobi, he's part of the Upstart organization. Now, I'm not going to dive too much into the Upstart organization. Just know that they were a group of people who played this very sick game where they went after other mutants to kill them off as a way to receive points in their game. But for Shinobi, what he's trying to do right now is bring back the inner circle. Now, we learn here that for Archangel and also Shinobi, they knew each other since they were children because their fathers were part of the Hellfire Club in the earlier days. But even back then, for Archangel, he knew that Sebastian was abusing his wife and son. And of course, that means Shinobi. And so for Archangel, he's very surprised in the idea that Shinobi would want to bring back the inner circle and take up where his father had left off at after his father had abused him. Now, you also have Archangel tell Shinobi like, hey, listen, I'm not going to join. And the reason why, because the inner circle, they represent so much evil in the world. It would be wrong for me to join that kind of organization. Now, it does lead into a battle between the two characters, but it's really more of Archangel trying to get Shinobi to realize that he has the ability to not turn out like his father did, become this evil person in the world. Now, for Shinobi, it's kind of well known that he had killed off his father, but at the same time, for Shinobi, he does not want to confirm. And so, even though you have Warren saying, like, hey, listen, we all know that you were the one who had killed off your father. For Shinobi, he's trying his best to not confirm that kind of information. But either way, while you have the two characters battling against each other, again, it's really more of Warren saying, you have the ability to end the cycle that you were part of when it came to your father and the inner circle. Don't become like him. Become a better person. Now, something else I should also mention is that for Shinobi Shaw, he's kind of like Shadowcat. He has the ability to phase through things, but also kind of being able to harden his body as well. But while you have the two characters battling against each other, you then have Psylocke being able to sneak up on Shinobi and give him her psychic knife. Now, when she does use it on him, it makes him remember all the bad times he had growing up with his father, Sebastian, all the abuse that he had went through. And so you have Warren tell Shinobi, like, you have the ability to change your life around. Your past cannot determine the person that you are going to be. It is your actions that are going to determine the kind of person that you are going to be. So use your actions to turn your life around and get away from the person that your father was in the past and don't become like him. And you have our two heroes just walk off just like that. And that really ends the entire book right there. Yes, it's a small video, guys, but honestly, we had to sit down and talk about it because it's the whole idea of the possibility of the Hellfire Club coming back, the inner circle, but also possibly Shinobi Shaw might be going down a different path. It's a huge maybe, but it could possibly happen. But again, this is where we're going to Okay, so it's time for us to get back into our coverage over the X-Men. And with that being said, we're going to pick up with the Uncanny X-Men annual number 18. Now, really, this is a very special annual for me personally. And the reason why, because we get Caliban going up against Sabretooth one more time to get revenge against Sabretooth for what he had did with the Marauders back in the Mutant Massacre storyline. Now, as we all know, when it comes to the Mutant Massacre, it was the first ever X-Men crossover ever done in Marvel Comics. It was X-Men, X-Factor, and also New Mutants, even though the New Mutants only had like one chapter in the entire crossover. But either way, when it came to the crossover, it was the first one ever done. But it was the Marauders going into the tunnels of the Morlocks, and they killed off a ton of Morlocks. But one of the Marauders was Sabretooth. And so you had Sabretooth just go on a killing spree, killing off Morlocks left and right. And for Caliban, he was a Morlock. So to see his people get massacred really did bother him a lot. Now, after the Mutant Massacre, you then had Caliban join X Factor. Now, it was only for a short period of time where he was part of X Factor, but with them being with X Factor, they were then confronted by Apocalypse. Now, for Apocalypse, he wanted to bring X Factor and also Caliban over to his side. Now, X Factor, they said no, but Caliban said yes. And the reason why? He wanted revenge against the people who had caused him harm, but also caused the Mutant Massacre. And of course, that would be the Marauders, but especially Sabretooth. And so for Apocalypse, he took Caliban in. Now, after doing that, he did give Caliban an upgrade and made him a whole lot stronger so that he would be able to go after Sabretooth. Now, when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men, he did try once, but the problem was Caliban failed. But now he's trying again to come after the man he wants to kill so badly, and that would be Sabretooth. And so, getting into the opening pages for today's video, we do pick up with Caliban going after a group of kids who are just minding their business, having a good old fun time camping with one another. Now, the reason why he goes after them because, well, they have food, and he needs their food for a special person that he is currently holding as a hostage right now down in the old tunnels of the Morlocks. And so once you have Caliban being able to grab the food, he goes back into the tunnels of the Morlocks to hopefully feed his hostage what he had just stolen. And we kind of find out the man had kidnapped Jubilee. Now, the reason why he had kidnapped Jubilee is to do a fair trade. He is hoping the X-Men will trade Sabretooth over to him to get Jubilee back. Now, the reason why you have Sabretooth right now at the school of Charles Xavier is because around his time in Marvel Comics for Sabretooth, he was technically a prisoner there, but you have Charles Xavier trying his best to fix the mind of Sabretooth, to hopefully turn him into a better person. And so for Caliban, once he got word that the X-Men are currently holding on to Sabretooth, he was kind of like, no, that is not okay at all. That man had murdered a bunch of mutants, murdered a bunch of Morlocks. He has to die for what he has done. And so that is why he had kidnapped Jubilee, hoping to have a fair trade done to get Sabretooth to finally get his revenge. And so we do see that Caliban had left a letter behind for the X-Men to find that basically said like, hey, you want Jubilee back? Well, you got to hand over Sabretooth. Now, for the X-Men, they also realized that Caliban only wants one person to bring Sabretooth over to him, and that would be Kitty Pryde. And the reason why, because in the early days of X-Men comics, when it came to Kitty Pryde and also Caliban, they were really able to kind of build a bond with one another. Now, for Sabretooth, he hates the idea that he's being used as a bargaining chip to get Jubilee back because technically he's not an X-Men. He hates the X-Men with a passion. And so you have him try to make a deal with Charles Xavier and also Jean Grey as a way to get Jubilee back. Now, for Charles Xavier, he's kind of like, dude, you have no room here to try to make any kind of deal with us at all. Now, for Sabretooth, all he wants is the glow. Now, in my last video, I didn't really properly mention the whole idea of what the glow was. I mean, I did, but I didn't use the word glow to kind of explain why he says the glow. You see, for Sabretooth, he had a character known as Birdie who would go into his mind to ease the pain in his mind to make things easier for him day in and day out. And for him, he would call it the glow. Now, Birdie died back in the miniseries for Sabretooth. And so you now have other characters who are psychics who could kind of give him that glow, like Charles Xavier, Jean Grey, and also Psylocke. And so he tells Jean Grey, if you want me to help you get Jubilee back, you're gonna have to give me the glow. And of course, they say no, because he has no room here to make any kind of commands at all. Now, for Jubilee, we do see her being able to break away for a short period of time from Caliban. And here's how. You see, for Caliban, for most of his life, he had lived down in the tunnels of the Morlocks. And so because of that, his eyes are no longer able to take a huge amount of brightness all at once, like, for example, the sun. And so for Jubilee, her powers comes in handy right here because with the brightness of her powers, it really does bother his eyes a lot, allowing her to attempt to escape from him and to hopefully get back over to the X-Men. But the problem is that she gets lost very easily in the tunnels of the Morlocks, and so it allows Caliban to be able to catch up to her and take her back in once again as a hostage. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde arrive. Now, when she does arrive, we have to remember that for Kitty Pryde, she's kind of upset with Charles Xavier because at the tail end of Fatal Attractions, you had Charles Xavier use Kitty Pryde as a way to hopefully bring Colossus back to the side of the X-Men. Now, that plan did not work out at all. But it's Kitty Pryde saying like, here you are again, trying to use me to get one of my friends to do something they don't want to do, or go against one of my friends like Caliban and Colossus. But either way, she does agree to do the mission as a way to get Jubilee back. Now, you do have Jean Grey give Sabretooth a little small piece of the glow. Of course, the whole idea of giving him the chance to ease his mind from all the pain that he has suffered over the years in his life by his father, other people who had done wrong by him. Now, you do have Jean Grey kind of give him too much of the glow, where he then begs her to stop. And he then agrees to go with Kitty Pryde, but you did have Charles say, hey, you're going with Kitty Pryde. But the restraints, they stay on as a way to protect Kitty Pryde, but to also protect Jubilee as well. Now, once you have Kitty Pryde and also Sabretooth arrive in the tunnels of the Morlocks, just like that, you have the two characters begin to fight against each other. Now, for Sabretooth, he kind of believes he has the ability to get one over on Kitty Pryde, that he should be able to easily take her down. But she then reminds him that, one, her ability makes it hard for people to take her down, but on top of that, she was trained by different people, like, for example, Wolverine. And so she was then able to put him back in his place once again, where he does agree to work with her. Now, you do have the two characters continue on in the tunnels of the Morlocks to hopefully find Jubilee, to save her life, or to just bring her back home and get her away from Caliban. Now, for Sabretooth and also Shadowcat, they continue on in the tunnels of the Morlocks. The problem is they enter a room that was set up as a trap by Caliban, because as soon as they walk in, the room begins to flood. Now, Kitty Pryde has the ability to get the heck out of there by using her phasing ability, but it also means she'll leave behind Sabretooth, and she cannot do that. And so right now, our two characters are stuck in a room that's flooding with water. Now, for Kitty Pryde, we have to remember that she has the ability to phase through technology and make them short circuit. So she finds a fuse box that does short circuit and opens up a door to allow her and Sabretooth to get the heck out of there. But the problem is, the Caliban, they're now going into an even more dangerous room in the tunnels. And the reason why it's more dangerous in this part of the tunnels, because there's some kind of squid monster down there. Now, for me personally, I thought at first, like, okay, it's some dangerous creatures that have been killing off the Morlocks left and right and be an actual challenge for our characters. No, it's just some squid creature that's really huge. And yes, it's big, but you do have Sabretooth being able to easily take down the creature. Now, before he does that, you have Caliban also jump in to help out taking down the squid monster. Now, for Sabretooth, at first, he wants to just walk away to allow Kitty Pryde and also Caliban to die by the hands of this squid creature. But then he realized he should jump back in the battle to take down the creature, which he does, but he does have a reason why he jumped back into the battle to help out Kitty Pryde and Caliban. And the reason why, because for Kitty Pryde, her phasing ability, because once you had him being able to save her and get her over to where Jubilee was at so that he can take down the squid creature, once he was done, he asked her, like, hey, are you still using your phasing ability at the moment? And she says yes. And for him, that's perfect. And the reason why, because remember, her phasing ability short circuits any piece of technology very easily. And for example, his restraints. And so once he does put his hands through her phasing body, just like that, the restraints come off. He's now free to kill people more easily with his claws now being out. And so you have Sabretooth try to beat down on Caliban, like try to kill off the man. Now, at first, while you have Sabretooth being able to deliver one heck of a beatdown on Caliban, you didn't have Kitty Pryde and also Jubilee being able to step in and bring down Sabretooth just like that and put the restraints back on him to take him back over to school of Charles Xavier. Now, for the two ladies, they tried to offer Caliban a new home, but he says no. And the reason why, he feels like he is destined to be alone forever, even though there are people like the X-Men who are trying to open up their doors to allow him to have a home. He still feels like he's destined to be alone forever. But this Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we do pick up with Uncanny X-Men issue number 310. Now, this is a very important issue, and the reason why, because you have Scott Summers and Cable being able to work out their issues. And let me explain. You see, in an earlier story arc, we had learned that Cable was the actual son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor. Now, here's the thing. In the early 1990s, we were kind of left to believe that he was just a clone of Strife, that Strife was the son to Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, to only find out that's not the truth at all, that in reality, Cable is the son to Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor. And so, in the last few story arcs that we have covered when it came to the X-Men, we have seen Cable trying his best to process the whole idea of being the son of Scott Summers, the person that he has been around for a good while now in X-Men comics in different kinds of situations. But as we get into the opening pages for Uncanny X-Men issue number 310, we pick up with Scott Summers and Banshee. Now, these two characters are on their way over to the bachelor party for Scott Summers. As we all know, around this time in Marvel Comics, Scott just got engaged to Jean Grey. As a matter of fact, in a few videos, we're going to cover the actual wedding of those two characters. But on their way over to the bachelor party, they walk into the danger room. Now, when they do that, they see a certain scene being played out right now in the danger room, something very close to Scott Summers. And that would be the moment where you have Scott Summers having no choice but to go ahead and give up his baby, young Nathan, who was Cable in the past, but he had to give up his son to save his son's life. And the reason why, because back in X Factor Comics, in a storyline called Endgame, Apocalypse was able to give young Nathan the techno-organic virus. Now, after that was done, you then had Cyclops be confronted by the Ascani. Now, we have not fully talked about the Ascanis just yet. There are going to be videos down the road where we kind of break down the whole idea of what that group is. But they came to pass to taking on Cable into the future to save his life against the techno-organic virus. But they told Cyclops, you will never see your son ever again. And so for Scott Summers, he believed that he would never see his young boy. And technically, they were right. They didn't see Cable as a young boy. He saw Cable as a grown man. But either way, we do learn that right now in Danger Room, that scene right now being replayed in front of Scott Summers and also Banshee. And the reason why? Because Cable played it in the Danger Room for a special reason. But unfortunately, we're not really able to learn just right off the bat why Cable was playing that special moment of Cyclops in the Danger Room. Instead, we jump over to other members of the X-Men because, like I said a moment ago, Cyclops was on his way over to his bachelor party. And so we see the different members of the X-Men that he had invited. So Archangel, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Beast, and also Bishop. Now, for Bishop, he never heard the whole idea of a bachelor party. And the reason why, because in the future, when it came to marriage, it was not really around as much as it was in the current time for Marvel Comics. Now, for the X-Men, they're kind of tired of hearing the whole idea of what the future was like for Bishop. It's a funny moment. But we can now transition back over to the school of Charles Xavier, where we pick up with a character known as the Executioner. Now, the Executioner was a new character kind of invented in the early 1990s, but his origin was not given to us until the later 90s period in a Gambit comic. So for right now, all we know that his main goal is to go after different mutants who are technically labeled as murderers, but were not even tried for the crimes they had committed. And so he feels like he's the only person left in the world who should go after mutants who are, well, murderers and, well, kill them off. And so apparently right now for the X-Men, they're holding on to a mutant who is actually a murderer. Now you would think like, oh, it has to be Sabretooth because recently Charles Xavier took Sabretooth in to hopefully help heal his mind and turn him into a good guy. But there's somebody else in the school of Charles Xavier that has been labeled as a murderer. Now we do transition back over to Cyclops and Cable. Now, as we do, it's really more of Cable saying, listen, the reason why I am here because you sent me an invite to your wedding, to Jean Grey and yours wedding. And the thing for Cable is like, wait, so you think after we found out that I'm your son, that everything is okay right now? We'd be one big happy family? Because to Cable, he's kind of wondering how Cyclops truly felt with the whole idea of giving up his son to hopefully save his life. Because to Cable, he kind of believes that for Cyclops, he just moved on like it was nothing. Like, oh, hey, my son's gone now. Oh, well, I got Jean Grey. I got the X-Men, gotta keep going. But in reality, for Cyclops, it was more of, no, I was heartbroken. It was really hard for me to kind of move on with my life, knowing that I just had failed my son and having no choice but to go ahead and give him up to save his life to people from the future. Let's go ahead and get back over to the other X-Men, the one at Cyclops' bachelor party. Now, when we do, we kind of learn here that really we get reminded here that there is some kind of big secret going on with Gambit and also Sabretooth. Because in an earlier video, you had Sabretooth mention that he knows Gambit very well, that Gambit is hiding something. And so for Gambit, he goes around asking different members of the X-Men how they feel with the whole idea of Charles Xavier allowing Sabretooth to be at the mansion. But you didn't have Archangel tell us like, listen, whatever you're hiding, sooner or later, you're gonna have to tell us what is the big secret going on right now between you and also Sabretooth. And really, speaking of Sabretooth, we see him inside his cell. Now for Sabretooth, he does pick up the scent of somebody else inside the mansion that tells him automatically, hey, listen, there's trouble here right now, and I need to warn the rest of the X-Men what's going on right now in their home. But before you have Sabretooth being able to tell Cable and Cyclops what's happening inside the X-Mansion, you have Cyclops replaying a different moment in time for Cable to kind of show him like, dude, when I lost you when you were a baby, it broke my heart. I cried. I was broken. Jean Grey was in my corner trying to help me back up, trying to tell me like, hey, you had no choice. You did not fail your son. You saved his life. But either way, for Cyclops, he still failed in so many kinds of ways. As a father, as a leader of X Factor, being able to stop Apocalypse. For Cyclops, the man was broken. Now for Cable, even though he's seeing all of this right now in front of him, it's kind of like, still, like, you gave me up and you're still kind of acting like it's in the past and you have no choice but to go ahead and move on. And it kind of shows me that maybe, just maybe, you did not truly miss me at all. Now, you then have Sabretooth say, hey guys, listen, you have trouble right now inside the mansion. And right now, you need to be on your A game. Now, getting back over to the bachelor party, you have Banshee arrive at the party by himself. And the rest of the guys there, they realize Cyclops is missing. Banshee was supposed to bring Cyclops. Where in the world is Cyclops? And so you have Banshee lie to guys like, hey, listen, he'll be here soon. But he does not tell them that he's with Cable. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to the Executioner, he goes after different mutants that he believed are, well, murderers. And so we kind of find out, no, he's not going after Sabretooth, he's going after Emma Frost. Now, here's a big catch. Emma Frost did not really kill anybody, but she failed to protect her students, and that would be the Hellions. Now, the Hellions were kind of like her way of having the New Mutants. You see, for Charles Xavier, he had the X-Men, but then you had the younger class known as the New Mutants. So for Emma Frost, she went in her own class as well, and she had the Hellions. Now, most of the Hellions had died in the earlier parts of our coverage over the X-Men. And so for the Executioner, he's kind of like, no, she has to die because she failed to protect them. It's her fault that they are dead, meaning to his mind, she is a murderer. Now, we also learn for the Executioner that he's currently using Cable's technology as a way to teleport around the world. Of course, I am talking about body sliding. Now, for Executioner, he does find Emma Frost, and you do have Cyclops and Cable work together to hopefully bring him down. Now, for the Executioner, he is able to get away by the end of the battle because, again, he's currently using Cable's technology as a way to teleport across the world. And so once he realized that he's going to lose the battle, he got the heck out of there. Now for Cable, he wants to know why in the world is the X-Men going so hard to protect Emma Frost, somebody who was an enemy of the X-Men. And you have Cyclops say, like, listen, it's all about having compassion for other people because once you stop having compassion, you become just like our enemies. Now, for me, I'm like, not really, but I kind of get where he's going with this. Now, for Cable, kind of same thing as well. Like, okay, you say so, but at the same time, I understand where you're going with this. Now, for Cable, he says, listen, Cyclops, I never truly hated you. For me, it was more of trying to figure out if you were just like me, very upset about the fact that you and I were cut off from one another. We were separated from one another for a very long time. And so now Cable understands that for his father Cyclops, his dad was so heartbroken when he lost his son. And so you have Cable say, listen, let me go ahead and just drop you off at your bachelor party, but also tell you, yes, I'll be there at the wedding. And the book ends on that. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are finally here, guys. We're going to cover X-Men issue number 30. Now, this is a very special issue because this is the book where you have Cyclops and Jean Grey, well, get married. This is a very important issue, but also after this book right here, you did have our two young heroes go on some wild adventures that we're going to cover soon on the channel. But also it kind of begins the whole idea of us learning some more pieces of the origin of Cable after Cyclops had to give up Nathan to hopefully save his life from the techno-organic virus. But either way, here we are, X-Men issue number 30, The Wedding of Cyclops and Jean Grey. I do hope you enjoy. Now, I kind of want to sit down and have a good conversation about the opening pages of this storyline because it's Jean Grey right now trying to get ready for the wedding. You got Storm there. You have different female characters of the X-Men there, like Jean Grey's mother as well. But the reason why I kind of want to sit down and talk about this moment right here is because you have Jean Grey reading a letter that she had received from Wolverine. Now, as you all know, when it came to Fatal Attractions, you have Magneto being able to rip off the adamantium off the bones of Wolverine. Now, after that was done, he had quickly left the X-Men to go on his own adventures. As a matter of fact, we have not covered any storylines yet when it comes to Wolverine being on his own after losing his adamantium. But either way, it's Jean Grey kind of upset, but just really sad because Wolverine is not there for the wedding. You know, she still has feelings for Wolverine and would love the idea of him being there, but unfortunately he could not make it. But he does say like, hey, listen, I wish you and Scott the best. And for Jean Grey, it makes her cry, but at the same time, she understands that he needs his space. Now, I want to jump over to the guys. And the reason why, because, okay, you have the guys talking about tying a bow tie and how difficult it is to tie a bow tie. And honestly, I agree with them. Bow ties, for me personally, are very difficult to tie, but it then leads into Charles Xavier entering the room. Now, for Charles, he is happy about the idea of Jean Grey and Cyclops getting married. It's a very lovely thing to see. But at the same time, it's also him kind of realizing that he has to look at the X-Men in a new type of light. And what I mean by that statement is that most of the X-Men, they were there when they were kids. So he watched the X-Men grow up and turn into adults. And so it's now him realizing that, oh, they're adults now. They're going to get married. They're going to have families. They might leave the X-Men to just have normal lives. Like, they are adults now, and technically, they can make their own decisions. And so for Charles, it's kind of sad because he watched these young kids grow up to lead into a moment like this. Cyclops, Jean Grey coming together. And so you have Charles Xavier express that he loves the idea of these two characters getting together, but then he also shows the guys how to tie a bow tie properly. We also get a page where it's Charles Xavier kind of expressing the fact that he's afraid of losing the X-Men forever as they get older. Now, of course, he's talking about them getting married, having families, and moving away. Not the idea of them dying, but he's afraid that once they do get married, have their families, move away, he's going to lose them forever. So yes, he's happy for Cyclops and Jean Grey, but at the same time, he's afraid he is going to lose them. And it's like, man, like he's kind of like their father figure, really. Like, yes, Jean Grey has her father, but for Cyclops, he does too. But growing up, Cyclops, that was his dad, Charles Xavier. Now, we also learn here that Charles also got a letter from Logan, but he has not read it just yet. He will at the very end of this video. But we can now transition into the ceremony. Now, when we do, it's still Charles Xavier still being able to narrate for us his feelings of the whole idea of the wedding for Cyclops and Jean Grey. But honestly, it's just Charles Xavier continuing the whole idea of how he is like a father to Jean Grey, and he looks at Jean Grey as a daughter. And really, as he watched Jean Grey's father walk her down the aisle, he's kind of like, he understands what her father is going through. You're now giving up your child to marry someone. And so for Charles, he's like, okay, everything's going great. They say their vows, they dance. This was a great ceremony. Now, we also get reminded that when it comes to the home of the X-Men, Charles Xavier had taken in Sabretooth. And the reason why, because he truly believes he has the ability to cure the mind of Sabretooth by hopefully fixing his mind and turning him into a good guy. Now, we already know that's a bad idea. It's not going to work out. But for Charles, he still believes in everyone. Now, with that being said, you have Sabretooth right now kind of thinking of the possibility of just ruining the entire event of the wedding for Scott Summers and Jean Grey by going down there and just start killing people left and right. But you have Wolverine leave a message in the ground saying, hey, don't think about it at all. And so Sabretooth realized the message came from Wolverine, and Sabretooth realized that maybe, just maybe, he should not even bother trying to ruin the event for Scott Summers and Jean Grey. And we do transition back over to the wedding, and you have the wedding go on and do different events like, the food, catching the bouquet. You have different guests being able to talk to one another. Like, for example, you have Cable ask Val Cooper if he's still wanted by the law. And she's kind of like, listen, we're at a wedding. I'm going to turn my head, pretend I didn't see you here at all, and go our separate ways. And so it's kind of cool to see the X-Men being able to come together for this good event. Now, with all that being said, at the end of the wedding, when most of the guests had left, where now it's just the X-Men, X-Factor, Excalibur, X-Force, all the X-teams basically, you have Jean Grey being able to get that dance with Charles Xavier. Because like I said, for her, Charles is kind of like a father figure to her. She wants to spend that time with him. So you have the two characters being able to have that dance at the wedding, and it's honestly a pretty good moment. And you have Charles realize that, and Jean Grey too, that everyone here is like her family. Now, I kind of want to transition over to a conversation that takes place between Cyclops and also Charles Xavier. And the reason why, because it really shows like the father and son relationship between these two characters. Because, like I said earlier, for the first class X-Men, Cyclops was kind of like the only one who did not really have a family to go to on different holidays. You know, Jean Grey had her parents. I want to say Angel had his father. Iceman had his parents as well. And Beast, I also want to say he had his parents as well. But for Scott Summers, he believed that his parents were dead. And so Charles Xavier was that father figure to him. And for Charles Xavier, he looked at Cyclops as his son. And so now with Cyclops now being a grown man, getting married, it's Charles kind of like, my son grew up. And so for Cyclops, he's saying, I want to say thank you because thanks to you, I'm the man I am today. The one that people look up to, the one people love so much, the one people want in their corner. And it's all because of you. And so you have Cyclops leave to go his honeymoon with Jean Grey. Now, the ending of the book kind of leads us into not a new era, but like a new direction for the X-Men as we go closer and closer to the next crossover we're going to do here on the channel very soon. Because you have Charles Xavier open up two letters. Now, the first one is really more important for me because it's Moira McTaggart telling Charles like, hey, we might have a key here to find a cure for the legacy virus that's right now killing off mutants left and right. And that key could possibly be Cable. Now, the second letter came from Wolverine. And honestly, it's just Wolverine saying like, dear Chuck, lighten up, your old pal Logan. And for Charles, he begins to laugh. And the book ends on that note right there. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be a short video today because it's only the wedding for Scott Summers and Jean Grey. But yeah, it's a great issue, guys. I loved it a lot. But after this, things get hard for the X-Men once again. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. I'll see you on the next comic book video. Later.